On Hannity's next.
All right, Tucker, thank you. Great show as always. And welcome to Hannity. We are following multiple developing stories tonight. First, two high-profile so-called champions of women and women's rights. Democratic Senator Al Franken, Congressman John Conyers remain in hot water tonight over numerous allegations of sexual misconduct. And you won't believe who all of a sudden is calling for due process under the law in order to defend her embattled colleagues. We'll tell you about that. We'll also expose the phony double standard within the Democratic Party today. Plus, we're continuing our investigation of the investigators that are carrying out the Russian probe. Tonight, we have new damning information about special counsel Robert Mueller and one of his top investigators, Andrew Weissman. Also tonight, for the next 3.5 weeks, Republicans, you are now facing the biggest challenge in a generation. I have an important message to those in the U.S. Senate who have not been fulfilling their promises. Plus, we have good news to report tonight. The economy is booming, and this all despite congressional inaction. The president is building a steady record of accomplishments. That and much more in tonight's breaking news opening monologue. As we speak tonight, the Democratic Party is drowning in a sea of scandals. Senator Al Franken has been forced to issue multiple apologies after now 4 women have come forward to accuse him of sexual misconduct. Now, the allegations include unwanted kissing, groping, and earlier today, Franken apologized yet again, but made it clear he has no plans to step down. Watch this.
I know that I've let a lot of people down, people of Minnesota, my colleagues, my staff, my supporters, and everyone who has counted on me to be a champion for women. If you had, asked me 2 weeks ago, would any woman come forward with an allegation like this, I would have said no. And so I cannot speculate. This has been a shock, and it's been extremely humbling. I am embarrassed. I feel ashamed. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start my job. I'm going to go back to work. I'm going to work as hard as I can for the people of Minnesota, and I'm going to start that right now. I'm someone who, hugs people. And I've learned from these stories that in some of these encounters I've crossed a line.
Now, Senator Groper is not the only high-profile Democrat now facing sexual harassment allegations. The longest-serving member of Congress, John Conyers, is in hot water after new revelations show that he settled one sexual harassment case out of court, paying a former staffer not out of his own money, but out of congressional office funding. Another congressional aide has also accused the Democratic congressman of verbally abusing her and even said Conyers once held a meeting in his underwear. This weekend, Conyers issued a statement announcing his decision to step down as the ranking member of the House Judiciary Committee, but Conyers said he has no plans of resigning from office, writing in part, quote, "I very much look forward to vindicating myself and my family before the House Committee on Ethics." Of course, there's no shortage of Democrats in Congress that are coming out to defend Franken and Conyers. They're Democrats. All of a sudden, they have discovered, wow, due process and not rushing to judgment is a good thing. Imagine that. Take a look.
Should Franken resign?
Listen, Al Franken has acknowledged what he did was wrong, and it was wrong. He has also submitted his whole case to the Senate Ethics Committee. I think that was the right thing to do.
Do you think Congressman Conyers, you sit with him on Judiciary, should he resign?
Well, I think the ethics process should proceed.
You know Senator Franken, you've served with him. What do you think should happen to him? Should he resign?
That's the question that will have to be determined after the investigation.
The House Ethics just this afternoon announced an investigation into John Conyers. He needs to be held accountable for whatever happened.
Should he step down?
That. So let's wait and see what the House Ethics does.
Your colleague, Al Franken, has been accused. Do you think he should resign?
I think that is a distraction to be talking about resignation.
Do you now think that your colleague Conyers should resign from the House?
No, and I don't think the rules are different from anyone else.
House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi is also rushing to defend Conyers. She's saying, oh, no rush to judgment. She's actually calling for due process. Watch this.
We are strengthened by due process. Just because someone is accused, and was it one accusation? Is it two? I think there has to be. John Conyers is an icon in our country. He has done a great deal to protect women, violence against women.
He got to hide his settlement. He got to, his accusers had to go through all sorts of craziness. So why is he entitled to new due process in this case?
No, we are talking about what we have heard. I've asked the Ethics Committee to review that.
Yeah.
He has said he'd be open. He will cooperate.
Do you believe
with
the
any
accusers?
review. Excuse me?
Do you believe John Conyers is accused?
I don't know who they are. Do you? They have not really come forward. And that gets to
you don't know if you believe the accusations?
That's for the Ethics Committee to review.
Now, I stand consistent. I say never rush to judgment. I say everybody deserves the presumption of innocence, and I stand by that in this particular case. But it is funny that Congresswoman Pelosi only seems to care about due process, but only when Democrats are involved. During that same interview, Pelosi was asked about a comment she made in 1998. Then host of Meet the Press, Tim Russert, asked her about the investigation into Bill Clinton. This gets rather humorous, but sad.
Why the silence when there have been these allegations, serious ones, about President Clinton?
Well, I'd like to say that I think that the women of America are speaking out about what they think about this whole situation. And the women of America are just like other Americans in that they value fairness, they value privacy, and do not want to see a person with uncontrolled power, uncontrolled time, unlimited money investigating the President of the United States.
With inconsistent statements like this, can you really trust the Democratic Party to be the champion for women? Or are they just playing politics with the topic? Can the Democratic Party really stand for women when it protected the Clintons for 30 years, who took millions and millions of dollars from countries with the most atrocious women's rights records? And can the Democratic Party really stand for women when it supports a person for president who we all know actively tried to silence all of her husband's sexual assault accusers? And by the way, even on Meet the Press, they called Bill Clinton a predator, being accused of predatory behavior. The answers to us are pretty simple. Now, we turn our attention to another top story tonight. The lawyers for former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn are reportedly meeting with members of Robert Mueller's team, a sign that a deal could in fact be in the works. Tonight, once again, we are investigating the investigators behind this Russia collusion probe, including the special counsel himself, Robert Mueller, and one of his top prosecutors, Andrew Weissmann. The LA Times this weekend out with a brand new profile on Mueller, highlighting many of his serious flaws. Now, according to the article, quote, Mueller has a record that shows a man of fallible judgment who can be slow to alter his chosen course. Now, the article goes on to criticize his handling of the 2001 anthrax case while Mueller was serving as the director of the FBI. The report reads, quote, his tenacious yet linear approach to evaluating evidence led him to fumble the biggest U.S. terrorism investigation since 9/11. Now, of course, this is the very same Robert Mueller who stood by and did nothing when he was the director of the FBI, while the controversial sale of Uranium-1 was being approved by Hillary Clinton, Eric Holders, and others in 2010. Now, keep in mind, in 2009, the FBI had evidence of Russian bribery linked to Uranium-1. Remember, a confidential informant provided further evidence of a potentially illicit deal. This was 18 months before, where 20% of America's uranium was at stake here, all while the United States faces a uranium shortage. So why didn't Robert Mueller stop that horrible deal? Now some are questioning the motives behind who Mueller chose to staff the Russia investigation. Later tonight, you're going to meet a woman named Sidney Powell. She worked at the DOJ for a decade. She believes that one of Mueller's top investigators, Andrew Weissmann, has a documented history of using strong-arm tactics to seek convictions, unethical behavior. Our own colleague, Greg Jarrett, will also join us tonight. He did digging into Weissman's past. He came to the same conclusion. Remember back during the Enron accounting scandal, Weissman, well, he was a hard-charging prosecutor on the task force that brought a controversial obstruction of justice case against the accounting firm, Arthur Andersen. That eventually put that company out of business. It cost tens of thousands of people their jobs, and it was all for nothing because in 2005, the U.S. Supreme Court overturned the obstruction of justice conviction in a 9-0 unanimous ruling. But that's not the only example of Weissman's aggressive tactics, resulting in a case being overturned. The conviction of a business transaction between Enron and Merrill Lynch, it sent people to jail, was also reversed by the 5th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals. Now, critics have also accused Weissman of intimidating witnesses, creating crimes that don't even exist, and in one case in particular, withholding evidence that was exculpatory, that would have helped the defendant. And just like Mueller, Weissman is also tied to this corrupt Uranium One deal and the ensuing cover-up. Weissman ran the DOJ's fraud section during the Russian bribery scheme. And Greg Jarrett noticed that his name, his signature, are on the bottom of the plea agreement that was signed by the Russian businessman involved in that case. So why in God's name would Mueller appoint Weissman, with being this record of being overturned, to be involved in the Russia investigation? If we're going to be entirely honest, the entire Russia collusion investigation may never even have taken place if not for the complete hysteria on the left from the moment Donald Trump defeated Hillary on November 8th of 2016. Over the weekend, the president tweeted, quote, "Since the first day I took office, all you hear is the phony Democratic excuse for losing the election. Russia, Russia, Russia. Despite this, I have the economy booming and have possibly done more than any 10-month president. Make America great again." Now, the president is right to push these significant economic triumphs that have now taken place in the last 10 months. We're going to get to more of that good news in a minute. But first, I want to offer a sincere message to lawmakers in Washington. Despite setbacks, the House of Representatives, well, they have actually gotten some work done fighting for the president's agenda. They got the repeal and replace of Obamacare. They got the tax cut. They got 413 other bills and joint resolutions passed. But for the next 3.5 weeks, all eyes will be on the ineffective U.S. Senate, where we've seen a much different story unfolding. Now, of President Trump's 515 nominations, civilian nominations, only 249 have yet to be approved in almost a year. And of course, we all remember the Senate's failure to repeal Obamacare. And now a tax reform vote is looming. But its fate is totally uncertain tonight. And like many other pieces of crucial legislation pushed by the Trump White House, well, you have several Republican senators standing in its way. So tonight we asked John McCain and Lisa Murkowski, Bob Corker, Jeff Flake, the snowflake, and others who might be planning to kill the tax cut bill. I have a message for you. Voters did not put you in office to do nothing and vote no on everything. The American people put you in office to solve difficult problems and get the job done. So you don't like something in the tax bill? Fix it. And I don't love everything in this bill either, but over the next 3.5 weeks, all of America's watching. They expect a tax reform bill, one that lowers the corporate rate, brings back money and jobs from overseas, that gives a middle-class tax cut, repatriation money, also the millions of energy jobs that will be created. Because remember, with these cuts, well, that makes the opening of factories in the U.S. possible. A tax reform bill that's going to spur economic growth, hopefully for decades to come. No, the bill's not perfect, but earlier today, Senator Rand Paul announced he will support the Senate's tax reform legislation. Like him, I wish it went further. It's time for other lawmakers to join him. There's too much at stake. Do you even care about the forgotten men and women in this country, people in poverty, on food stamps, out of work? Now, despite the Senate's inability to pass laws and approve the president's picks, well, the president, he's working at the speed of Trump and has for the last 10 months to get things done. And, of course, members of the lazy Destroy Trump media aren't interested in doing their job, so we'll continue to do it for them. Take a look at that screen right there. Here are just some of the president's accomplishments. Now, there are so many, it would take us way too long to read them all. On top of the president's accomplishments since he took office in January, look at the economic numbers. Things are booming. According to the latest numbers available, in October, 261,000 jobs created. Unemployment, a 17-year low. Consumer confidence, a 17-year high. Median existing home price for all housing types in October 27. People's biggest investment, well, that's up 8.7% from January of 2017. Stock market, again, all-time high. And more people are in the workforce than ever. And on the campaign trail, President Trump promised to make our economy great. Well, so far, that's exactly what he's doing. That's why the Senate needs to get off their backsides and pass this tax reform package. It's vital. Take a look at the president pushing this tax cut earlier today.
I think the tax bill is going very well. We had a meeting on it today. It's going to be a tremendous tax cut, the biggest in the history of our country. You'll have to pay a lot less tax. That's okay. But we're going to have a tremendous, I think we're going to have great receptivity. But if we win, I think we'll probably have a bipartisan bill, meaning a number of people are going to come over. But I'm not so interested in that. We're really interested just in getting it passed. Again, it will be the biggest tax reduction in the history of our country. It'll bring jobs. It'll bring a lot of income coming into the country, buying product, etc. And I think it's doing very well.
Joining us now, author of the best-selling book, Vengeance, former Speaker of the House, Fox News contributor Newt Gingrich. Mr. Speaker, good to see you.
Well, it's good to see you.
Look,
and
go ahead.
I think the president has a lot to crow about. That was pretty impressive. Think about how close he is to getting the tax cuts that will lead to, I think, a generation of economic boom.
By the way, I use Ricola, and if it really gets bad, you need strong anti-inflammatories to get the vocal cords working. I use my voice. I'll try and talk more in your favor. But, you know, look at the statistics I just read off. That's significant economic growth. Major corporations now promising billions in investment. Factories saved from moving to Mexico because the president's involved by himself. Burdensome regulation, energy independence. The House, look, they're not perfect. Wasn't exactly happy with repeal and replace. The Senate's getting nothing done, Mr. Speaker. They haven't even confirmed half of the president's nominees.
Well, let's see how the next couple of weeks work out. I think you got, first of all, if they can get the tax bill through the Senate, that is a huge victory and erases a lot of problems. Second, I think they're going to get between 100 and 150 appointees approved between now and Christmas. That'll move judgeships, ambassadors, other jobs at a pretty fast pace up until they leave on Christmas Eve. So I think it'll be a different appearance.
Will they get this bill done?
Outside the U.S.
Do you think the Senate's going to get this tax bill done?
Yes. I think they will.
Why?
I think, because unlike to have more money, or do you want the government to have more money? There aren't many Republicans in the end who are going to come down for the government having more money. And I think Rand Paul today had a very fine article explaining why he was for the bill and why he hoped others would join him in being for the bill. And I hope you're going to see, I know, for example, that Ron Johnson has been very worried about the small business tax cuts. Well, I think that's been largely fixed, and I think that the National Federation of Independent Businesses and other folks who are for the Job Creators Network have all come out and said this is a very good first step for small business. It helps probably 95% of the small businesses in the United States. So there are a series of those things coming down the road that make me feel pretty optimistic.
Yeah. By the way, I've had your same throat issues. People think it really hurts to talk. It doesn't, right? I mean, we're not going to torture you. It just is what it is. The vocal cords get inflamed, and they just need to calm down, is all it is. But it doesn't hurt. I speak from experience. It just makes us think it hurts.
Yeah.
I like the middle class tax cuts as necessary. The corporate tax cuts will make us so competitive. Repatriation, there may be as much as $4 trillion that comes flowing back in short order to the United States. The steps the president's taken on energy independence will create millions of high-paying career jobs. I worry about one thing with the Republican Party. Help me out. And that is, it seems Reagan dropped the top marginal rates from 70 to 28% in his presidency. We doubled revenues to the government, 21 million new jobs, longest period of peacetime economic growth up to that point in history. What I worry about is, out of fear that of the class warfare rhetoric of the Democrats, that's why we're not cutting taxes across the board. In other words, top 20% pay 90-some-odd% of the tax bill, the income tax bill. It seems cutting their taxes would be smart, too, for everybody and would work like it worked for Kennedy and Reagan. Your thoughts?
Well, it would work, but remember, if you cut the corporate rate down to 20%, virtually everybody who's successful is going to be better off because they own the stock, they own the investments. So this is not exactly anti-success. I think the key here is, can you package a bill where you make it very hard to vote no? And that's the whole game here, making it hard to vote no. And I think they didn't want to give the New York Times, the Washington Post, Nancy Pelosi and those folks an easy club to beat them with. I think it probably was the right decision. I can make a good argument. I voted for the Reagan tax cuts. I can make a good argument for cutting everybody's taxes. But the truth is, if this economy booms, everybody who's successful is going to be a lot better off just because they're going to be part of a huge rising tide of economic opportunity.
Let me ask you about Franken Conyers. I played that Russert clip from Meet the Press with Nancy Pelosi, and now she's calling for due process, but only because it's a Democrat. I actually believe in not rushing to judgment on anybody, especially people that deny charges. So, and that goes for John Conyers or anybody else, and I believe in the presumption of innocence. I believe it strongly. I think everybody should. And it's proven me right with Richard Jewell and Duke LaCrosse and in Ferguson, and with Trump having the possibility of winning, or Baltimore, where the media's gotten it wrong so many times. And my question is here, you see selective moral outrage, and then the issue of defending the Clintons for 30 years comes into play. Just want to get your reaction to all of that and what you think of this double standard.
Look, we'll look back someday and realize we were the generation that had to put up with the Clintons for our entire life. That may be ending. This may all be coming to a head, and it's conceivable that a year or two from now they will have disappeared, and finally we'll be free at last.
Yeah. All right, Mr. Speaker. I like Ricola. If you need my doctor who helps in these moments, I'll give you it offline. I don't want to be encouraging the use of medicines because I'm not a doctor and I'm not going to play one on TV. We hope you feel better. And I would have talked less had you seemed to feel better. Thanks for being with us, Speaker Gingrich. And up next, we're just getting things started. Monica Crowley, Tammy Bruce, they are here to react to the Democratic Party's sexual harassment problems that are getting worse tonight. Later, we'll talk to a former federal prosecutor who's warning Robert Mueller, Andrew Weissman, and their investigation is dangerous and an outrageous abuse of power. That and the term Pocahontas, we'll explain straight ahead.
You said there's now a zero tolerance.
Yes.
John Conyers, what does that mean for him right now?
Let's say
in or out?
We are strengthened by due process. Just because someone is accused, and was it one accusation? Is it two? I think there has to be. John Conyers is an icon in our country. He has done a great deal to protect women, Violence Against Women Act, which the right wing is now quoting me as praising him for his work on that, and he did great work on that. But the fact is, as John reviews his case, which he knows, which I don't, I believe he will do. I believe that he will.
How is it that
excuse
you
me, may I finish my sentence?
Sure.
That he will do the right thing.
House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi calling Congressman John Conyers an icon, saying we can't rush to judgment. We need due process amid the sexual harassment allegations. Here with reaction is nationally syndicated radio talk show host, Fox News contributor Tammy Bruce, conservative columnist Monica Crowley, back with us. Let's start about the 30 years of defending the Clintons. Then I didn't hear many Democrats talk. I don't hear them ever talk about due process, not rushing to judgment if it's a Republican. It's pretty transparent now, but it's serious because I say to not rush to judgment on anybody, and that includes John Conyers, who I don't agree on anything with.
So the gravitational pull of partisan politics we know is incredibly powerful, Sean. But here's what makes Mrs. Pelosi's comments so fascinating and also so hypocritical. Because over the last couple of weeks, we've seen a lot of high-profile leftists, people on the left, now saying, well, we need a retrospective on the Clinton crimes against women, the rape allegations, the allegations of sexual assault and sexual harassment. There needs to be a reckoning. Some have even said Bill Clinton should have resigned 25 years ago,
wait,
right?
They could say it now, but wait a minute. The Clintons have no power.
But that's right. But that's what makes her words meaningless. Because if the left really meant what they've been saying over the last 2 to 3 weeks about Bill Clinton, then they should be applying an even standard across the board. And what you just saw with Mrs. Pelosi is, well, okay, the Clintons are no longer helpful to us, so we're going to pass judgment on him now that it's too late. But John Conyers, a civil rights icon, no, he needs to stay, and Al Franken needs to stay.
Let me add something here. This is why I split with Now, was during the Bill Clinton situation.
By the way, what you mean National Organization for Women? You were the president in LA chapter.
I was indeed.
Yeah.
And when I saw, this was where it was clear that it was a fraud. Susan Sarandon's even come out, I think in the last 2 days, saying this entire movement's been a fraud. And my first book, in 2001, saying that the racism, sexism, and homophobia lives on the left. Everything they're doing is fake. And it's like domestic violence. They say they're your champion, they're going to protect you, while they victimize you day after day. It is finally now becoming clear how much of a fraud this dynamic has been, how many lives they've ruined, and what they're saying when she says John Conyers is an icon. What they're saying is we're willing to have individual women's lives destroyed by these men in the name of the collective. And if anybody, of feminists of all people, should be appalled, liberal women should be appalled, realizing that they've been conned for 2 generations at this point.
It's too serious, and I said this in the Moore case. The charges were too serious, that people deserve answers. And eventually it's going to be the people that decide, which, by the way, rightly so, not commentators, not these fake news people. Let me tell you how bad it's gotten in this case. This was in the Huffington Post. I want to put it up on the screen, and you can read this. Leanne, meaning Leanne Tweeden, was never raped. She was never assaulted. She was never the victim of sexual violence or harassment. She was a willing and active participant in a comedy show that involved sexualized behaviors, and she consented to participate. She didn't consent to that picture. She was asleep, and that's called evidence. That's irrefutable, incontrovertible evidence. Let me put up another piece. There was a tweet, so-called feminist in this case. Emily Linden is her name. You know, here's an unpopular opinion. I'm actually not at all concerned about innocent men losing their jobs over false sexual assault harassment allegations. Oh, is it your brother? Is it your father? Is it your husband? Is it somebody you care about?
This country is built on individual liberty and individual rights. And what the left is all about, to Tammy's point, is about the collective. They will put their agenda and they will put the so-called good of the group ahead of the rights of the individual, right? So this is what we're seeing now across the board. And with these folks, I will say this, that if you are a woman accusing a man of the left of this kind of thing, you face an uphill battle. You face a much steeper fight because they put the group and the agenda ahead of individual rights.
Part of what has made this flood happen, especially in Hollywood, is the fact that the Clintons now are effectively powerless. They were the glue holding it up. People presumed she would be elected. The silence continued. But as they realized that the people that they were believing would remain in power would not, I think then, of course, a few women said, well, wait a minute. Why are we protecting Harvey Weinstein? Why are we protecting Price at Amazon? Why are we saying nothing when, in fact, they turn around and they realize because the Hillary Clinton campaign was also false, effectively.
But
why
Tammy,
are we
I got
doing
a
this
question.
now?
I got the crap beat out of me because I said don't rush to judgment. As it turns out, in the case of Roy Moore, when I said, okay, you have to answer these questions.
Yes.
Well, now we have a woman that's claims she has a yearbook. I've talked to forensic experts. They would be able to determine if the signature was his, if they can compare his writing at the time, and whether or not the ink was old or new.
Yes.
So why isn't nobody's doing the forensic here, which would answer one very significant charge?
Yeah, and look, I think we do have to look more cautiously at accusations that clearly have a goal or a benefit attached to them, like accusations made just prior to an election by individuals.
Or Clarence Thomas.
No, you know, and not that I think that some of those accusers are very credible and others perhaps are not. But the fact of the matter is, the people of Alabama will make their decision. What I object to is Mitch McConnell telling him then to leave the race when he has been strangely silent, hasn't he, over the Conyers issue, the Al Franken issue, where suddenly are all these champions on the right?
Because they're all
when it
scared
comes
to death, Tammy.
Well, but it also does not help their goal and their agenda.
Right, but they're
That's
all
the issue
scared to
for them.
death because God knows what's in anybody's closet here. I think when we talk about the hypocrisy of the left, right, we need to keep one thing in mind, Sean, and this is something you talk about on this program every night. The left is at war in this country, right? They're at war against the Constitution, against free market capitalism, against our very value system. They will not let anything or anybody get in the way of winning that war.
We all agree on this point. If these guys in Congress, they want to make the little settlement deals and they want to keep it confidential, they've got to use their own money. They can't use taxpayer money.
But this is also, though, about the transparency. And I think that at the same time, you've got a bubble in Washington that exempts themselves from the world as a whole, whether it's Obamacare or sexual harassment. That is what has to crumble.
Thank you both. Good to see you both.
You bet.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Up next,
Thanks,
we'll continue to investigate the investigators, things you won't hear anywhere else, I promise you, on television. You're going to hear tonight from a former federal prosecutor. She's saying Mueller's investigation is outrageous, an abuse of power, unethical behavior. She'll explain along with Greg Jarrett straight ahead. And Sebastian Gorka. And welcome back to Hannity. We continue to investigate the investigators. Now, my next guest worked for the DOJ for over a decade, says Robert Mueller's investigation is an outrageous abuse of power. Now, she is the author of License to Lie, Exposing Corruption in the Department of Justice. Former federal prosecutor Sidney Powell joins us, as well as Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett. So the LA Times, Sidney, had this piece. It was brutal to Robert Mueller. Andrew Weissman has the single worst record when you look at Merrill Lynch, Enron, Arthur Andersen. Tens of thousands of people lost their job. A 9-0 Supreme Court reversal of what he did. And the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, same thing, a reversal. Innocent people went to jail because he wouldn't allow bail, and they ended up again being exonerated. Also withholding exculpatory evidence in a case. Why would Mueller ever pick somebody with such an atrocious track record if he didn't have an agenda to be kind here, overly aggressive and abuse the power of that office?
You are putting it very politely, Sean. Andrew Weissman is the poster boy for prosecutorial misconduct. He was the driving force behind the indictment of Arthur Andersen, which, as you mentioned, within a week of being unsealed, eradicated a company, a venerable company, and 85,000 jobs worldwide with the stroke of the pen on the indictment itself. Andersen was given the death penalty, only to be reversed 9-0 by the Supreme Court 3 years later.
That never happens, by the way. Not many 9-0 decisions, are there?
No, there are not. And Justice Rehnquist wrote for the court, it was shocking how little criminal culpability the jury instructions required. Mr. Weissman had obtained the conviction by eradicating criminal intent from the jury instructions and persuading the judge to give instructions that simply were devoid of that crucial element.
You write, Greg Jarrett, that Weissman is a notorious lawyer, known for abusive tactics and for weaponizing the law in a ruthless and often unprincipled quest to convict. Innocent people have been victimized by him. His biggest cases, as we've been talking about, reversed.
Yeah, I mean, I think about all the people, tens of thousands of people who lost their jobs because of that man right there over absolutely nothing. And the Merrill Lynch employees who were incarcerated, some of them in solitary confinement before the Fifth Circuit released them. Yes, for nothing. I mean, this is a man who has been accused of threatening witnesses and hiding exculpatory evidence. It is unconscionable. It is unethical.
How does he even have the ability to practice law?
Because there is a syndicate going on within the Department of Justice. Let's call it a cartel, the equivalent of the mob. It's composed of that man, Andrew Weissman, Robert Mueller, James Comey, who has now lost his job, and Rod Rosenstein, who's the Deputy Attorney General. And the fact that all four of them are involved in the Trump-Russia investigation, it should be a cause for concern for every American. They have little credibility because their integrity has been compromised.
Nobody, Sidney, seems to know the power of a prosecutor before a grand jury. We know you can indict a ham sandwich. Why did Mueller pick this team? Obviously, he picked partisan Democrats. We've highlighted that. But picking a guy that is usually ruthless, unprincipled, perhaps even unethical tactics? Why would Mueller do that if he didn't have an agenda here and knowing this guy's background?
Because Weissman is the perfect tool for Mr. Mueller to do exactly what he wants to do. Weissman has a very long history of this, and he and Mueller go way back. They've been working together for at least 20 years. Rosenstein worked for Mueller back in 1990 through 93. Comey has worked with Mueller. They are part of what I call a corrupt cabal of former prosecutors and now current prosecutors again, who are willing to do whatever it takes to achieve whatever they want to achieve. And they define that themselves, not by the facts, but by whatever their goal is.
And the
willing
tactics
to
they
win
use,
at any cost.
Well, we'll give you a get-out-of-jail-free card. Just tell us what we want. That doesn't necessarily even have to be true.
You're going to tell us this, and that, or you're going to be indicted.
Let me go to you. You make the connection between Rosenstein and Comey and Mueller and Weissman. This deal like best BFFs.
They are.
All of them.
You know, as I say, it's sort of an illegal syndicate that's acting under the guise of the law.
How can this happen in the United States of America, Greg? This is not a banana republic here.
Because the Department of Justice, and particularly the FBI, and Comey and Mueller were at the FBI, have turned into this renegade rogue deep state that operates under their own rules.
Do you think they're
the
going
law
after,
be damned?
Do they really? They don't want Manafort. They don't want General Flynn. They want Trump.
Yes, and what I worry about are ruthless prosecutors who suborn perjury. What they do is they make promises and threats to defendants. You're going to spend 10 years behind bars unless you sign this statement, and the witness says, but that's a lie, and the prosecutor doesn't seem to care.
Or I'm going to go after your son.
It's extortion. It's bribery. When they do it, it's legal. When you and I do it, it's illegal. It's got to stop.
Sidney, last word. Do you agree with all that?
I do agree with that. He indicted Andrew Fastow's wife. That facilitated Fastow's cooperation. He put young Enron treasurer Ben Glisson in solitary confinement until he was ready to cooperate. He will do anything to get people to say what he wants them to say, and then he'll prove a case with hearsay. That's why there are always conspiracy charges. And we're not seeing mission creep here, Sean. We're seeing creeps on a mission to destabilize and destroy this president.
I have 2 copies of your book coming, thanks to my friend Greg Jarrett. We will read it in full. We will continue to do this investigation. It's scary what they're describing. When we come back, the president calls Senator Elizabeth Warren Pocahontas today. The left irate We're going to explain why the liberal senator is the one who exploited minority status. And we'll get reactions. Sebastian Gorka's next. And later we got the biggest example of fake news. Liberal Joe and Mika. You don't want to miss it. You'll laugh. Straight ahead. And welcome back to Hannity. So the fake news destroy Trump, liberal media losing their mind yet again over something President Trump said at the White House during an event honoring Native American code talkers who served in World War II. President Trump poked fun at one of his favorite targets, Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren, who has been proven to have lied about her Native American heritage. Here's what he said.
You were here long before any of us were here. Although we have a representative in Congress who they say was here a long time ago. They call her Pocahontas. But you know what? I like you because you are special.
Now, of course, the liberal media is jumping all over the use of the word and the name Pocahontas, which he has called Warren repeatedly. But shouldn't they be more focused on going after Warren, who's exploited her fake Native American heritage for her own personal gain? Here with reaction, former Deputy Assistant to the President, Fox News National Security Strategist, Sebastian Gorka. Dr. Gorka, Warren is now saying Trump called me a racial slur, will not shut me up. Well, there was a big investigation, and the use of minority status when it's not accurate seems to be a far bigger offense that the left will never talk about. Your reaction?
It's a continuation of everything you've covered so far in your show. There is a protected class in this country, and it's the elite of the left. They're like untouchables. If you're Conyers, if you're Al Franken, if you're Bill Clinton, you can preach that you're for women. You can preach that you're for the victim. But when you get caught red-handed, nothing happens to you. It's the same with Senator Warren. This is a woman who had a no-show job or a job where she taught one course and then picked up $400,000 from Harvard a year. And then she's let's use the correct phrase, Sean, she's using cultural appropriation. She's using the Native American heritage to get that job. And then when the president pointed out,
Dr. Gorka?
No, the left couldn't prove it. They tried their best to prove it. The best we found out is that she said, well, when she was young, her family told her that she had Cherokee blood in her. No proof, zero proof. When the president points it out, then she's the one who's been abused. Wrong. You abused the American native heritage when you lied about your ethnic background, Senator Warren.
And tried to take advantage of minority status that she never deserved.
Right, and which Harvard then waved as a flag in 1996 when they were accused of being too white. They said, no, look, we've got this woman on our faculty and she's part Cherokee. Bogus. This is fake news. It's classic fake news, Sean.
All right, what do you think? We've got all this hypocrisy going on as it relates to sexual harassment. The very same Democrats that many of whom were involved in smearing all the Clinton women, I mean smearing and defending what we now know is predatory behavior of Bill Clinton, and the outrage they show only when Republicans are accused of such things. Now they talk about due process. Now they talk about not rushing to judgment.
Right.
I'm consistent. I think that should be the case. Take everything seriously. They're too serious. Charges are serious. But people do still deserve the presumption of innocence, and that's even John Conyers. But they politicize this. Your thoughts?
Look, that's the American way. We have to be a nation of law and order, of rule of law, even for the elites. As my good friend...
Not trial by media.
Not trial by media, and not false accusations that are just built upon and built upon. Look, Sean, it's very simple. As my good friend Chris Plant, who has the morning radio show here in D.C., says all the time, if the left didn't have double standards, they wouldn't have any standards at all. That's the bottom line. It's flexible. It's made of rubber. Oh, and if you're one of us, if you're Hillary, if you're Bill, if you're Connors, if you're Franken, don't worry. When you get caught, we'll cover for you.
What should happen in those cases cases. In the Franken case, you have evidence and you have an admission, although not on everything. In Conyers' case, he says no. In Moore's case, he says didn't happen.
Well, ideally, the elite should police itself. They should say, no, you have to leave. You must show that you have moral fiber, and you must resign, or you must be sacked from your positions. If there's a legal case to be made, if there's actual sexual assault, that should be investigated to the end of the trail.
Agreed.
Whether they're Republicans or whether they're Democrats.
Agreed. I don't think it's hard to find. All right. As the Senate and this tax bill, we have 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Is it going to pass, and do you have any faith it will pass?
I give it a 50-50 shot. If they don't realize, if the GOP establishment doesn't realize that their necks are on the line, if this doesn't pass, then more fool them. More fool them.
All right, Sebastian Gorka, always good to see you. Thank you for being with us. All right, it's like one of the biggest examples of fake news. You can't make this stuff up. We're going to show you how liberal Joe and Mika on Conspiracy TV MSNBC straight up lied to their viewers. That's next. All right, before we go tonight, I just had to share with you the biggest example of fake news yet. Liberal Joe and Mika and MSNBC actually caught red-handed just lying to their viewers. They pretended that their show on Friday, which was actually taped on Wednesday, was live as the day after Thanksgiving. Watch this fake news.
Whoa! Wow. That was a great Thanksgiving.
It's Friday, November 24th.
Game?
Hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving.
How was your Thanksgiving?
Happy Turkey Day.
Willie, how was your Thanksgiving?
I've still got the belt unbuckled.
I'm telling you.
The game.
I'm not comfortable.
There was a fist fight at my dinner table. It was incredible.
My God.
Yeah.
Good to have you all on board on this day after Thanksgiving. I'm stuffed. I always cook the turkey with the guts in it.
Joe didn't notice.
I know. I ate the bag and it's like in one bite.
Was it BPA free?
It was. I don't know what, and it was still a little frozen, but that's okay.
Well, you know what? No, the game last night will make up for it.
That last.
I'm stuffed. The game last night. Oh, you can't make this up. This also got the attention of some of their viewers who took to Twitter and slammed the tube for this sleazy deception. Look, sometimes you do tape shows. I have a message to Joe and Mika. Well, not really. This is why nobody trusts you, and very few people watch you. You know, can you just kind of try a little bit? They're so insane over there at this point. Everything Trump makes them bubble and fizz like Alka-Seltzer in water. And it doesn't matter how many times they're wrong. Now they just oh, I am so stuffed. Oh, but the game saved Thanksgiving. Thank God the game was great. Yeah, the game that wasn't played and the turkey that wasn't eaten. You can't make it up. All right, that's all the time we have left this evening. As always, thank you for being with us. Set your DVR, never miss an episode. We will always be fair and balanced. We're not the Destroy Trump media. Let not your heart be troubled. Laura Ingraham, did you see my Twitter frying that turkey? And I mentioned you.
You know something? I was very proud of you for frying that turkey, and I appreciated the fact that you acknowledged I was a doubting Laura. I didn't know that you were so handy around the kitchen.